Hey everybody, I'm Amani, your holistic karmic astrological life coach, and today I'm talking to you all about the super full moon in Gemini that happens on the 3rd of January at 10:03 GMT time. Okay, so the term supermoon in astrology refers to a full moon that appears larger and brighter than usual in the sky, and this is because the moon is at its closest point to Earth in its orbit. The supermoon is also known as perigee, and the combination of the moon's proximity, closeness to Earth, and the alignment of the Sun, Earth and Moon creates the illusion of a larger and more radiant full moon. So the term supermoon was coined by astrologer Richard Noel in 1979, and astrologically supermoons have increased effects on emotions, tides and spiritual energies due to their increased gravitational pull that the full moon being closer to us has at this time, and this can lead to a bigger influence on human emotions and behaviour due to the moon's closer alignment with the Earth. So the theme for this super full moon in Gemini is stop collecting information and start speaking your truth, right guys? So a super moon brings 30% more intensity to the external, either or, tension between knowing and understanding, collecting and integrating, speaking and meaning. And what makes a super full moon different from the regular full moons is the intensity. As I said, it's 30% more bigger because the moon is at its perigee. I will learn to speak one day. Basically, perigee means closer point to Earth, and this isn't subtle. This isn't gentle, but ultimately, it's intensifying what we need to release. So it happens when the moon's at 19 degrees Gemini and the sun is at 19 degrees Sagittarius in terms of Sabian Symbols, and there's a stellium between the sun, Venus and Mars that are all in Sagittarius at a 36 degree orb tightness. So this is concentrated fire energy that demands and supports us being more truthful to ourselves and others and taking action, motivating us. And it happens in the Andropada 4, which is ruled by Pisces and Jupiter. So that's where the moon is. So I'll talk a bit about that in a second. The moon at the 19th degree of Gemini has the Sabian symbology of a large, aka volume, so a big book basically, and the sun at 19th degree Sagittarius has the symbology of pelicans, birds that are disturbed by people, and because of this they move their habitat, they change. So the key themes of the super full moon are mental, psychological and emotional, feeling overwhelmed, choosing truth over information, releasing what you've outgrown, speaking what you know, and moving away from chaos, disturbance, the things that are holding you back, And we've got, in terms of major aspects, we've got the moon making an opposition to Venus and Mars. We have the moon conjunct Jupiter, and we also have the moon making a semi-square to Uranus and also trying the moon's north node. So I'm going to talk more about aspects later and how they add to this full moon in Gemini. The 19th degree of Gemini, in terms of Sabian Symbols, rules our voice in the human body, and the sun rules our left femur. So this is all about standing firm in our truth and speaking up, which is the theme, finding our voice, speaking our truths. It's best for releasing our emotional and psychological clutter in our mind, the overthinking and that, speaking the truths that we have pushed down, letting go of information that doesn't serve wisdom, and clearing communication blocks. So whether it's, as I said, speaking your mind or letting go of certain relationships, going within you, thinking about the thoughts that you think over and over again. Sometimes we can't control it because it's OCD and has other mental health issues at the root of it, but it's all about trying to refine the ways that we take care of our psychological and emotional health. This is the full moon that is saying we're not doing this halfway anymore. You know, some of you have been collecting information like it's protection, gathering different beliefs, perspectives, understanding everything before you decide anything, thinking that one more piece of data, you know, will make you finally feel safe enough to act, you know. But here's what the full moon's actually asking. It's saying, you know enough, now speak it. Some of you have been sitting on truths you're terrified to voice, and you may be quiet this week, not because you don't know what to say, but because you're genuinely frightened of what happens when you actually say it. And this is why we bottle things in, right? A lot of the time, because we know we say certain things to certain people, the world between you and them, or your world, your inner world, you know, is going to change, and we can be afraid of change. This is why we stay in our comfort zone, right? So the full moon illuminates exactly what we've been avoiding, what truth, you know, we are sitting on, asking us, you know, what needs to be spoken, what would change if you finally admit what you need to admit out loud. Some of you have been confused all week, not depressed, not anxious, just stuck between knowing something and being able to say it. You can feel like the pressure is building between your inner knowing and your outer expression, like there's a gap between who you are privately and who you're willing to be publicly, and that gap is where the full moon's creating the maximum sort of like tension. And maybe some of you have been talking too much, you know, your words flowing, explaining, justifying, using communication to avoid feeling what's underneath the words. Maybe you've been performing understanding instead of expressing authenticity, and the full moon's asking the uncomfortable question: are you expressing or performing? Are you connecting or controlling through your words? Some of you have been silent when you needed to speak, and what you're not saying is louder than what you are saying, and the full moon is illuminating the gap between what you know privately and what you're willing to say, you know, voice publicly, as I said. And that gap is where your actual power lies, you know, if you're willing to close it. The Gemini full moons always activate their external tension between knowing and saying, between collecting information and actually integrating it, between understanding everything intellectually and being able to express it authentically, you know. But this full moon, the first one of, you know, 2026, is forcing the issue. Our nervous system has been processing this pressure all week. You may have felt it as restlessness, their own ability to settle, to sleep, as words got stuck in your throat, as thoughts race faster than you could speak them. And remember, you know, that's not anxiety, that's the full moon creating pressure between your inner world and your outer expression, and this is demanding integration. And as I said, you know, some of you may have mental health issues like myself and stuff, so you may suffer from anxiety, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but you may feel extra anxious this week, and then you're thinking, oh, you know, is it my anxiety playing up, or, you know, my depression, or, you know, what is it? And as I said, you know, there's a link, you know, the moon rules the tides, the water, and then it also, you know, influences our emotion. So, you know, the work this week isn't to collect more information, it's to understand more, you know, deeply yourself more deeply, how to control your emotions more deeply, and to love yourself more deeply, and forgive and let go, and, you know, to work your way to clarity. Now, for some of you, yeah, you know, collect more information, understand more deeply, and think your way to clarity. But for some of you, you know, the work is to speak what you already know, you know, so it's up to you to choose which category you fall into, you know, whether it's to voice what you've been sitting on, to close the gap between your private truth and your public expression, or to gather some more facts. But this full moon is actually telling us we've got enough facts, right? So, you know, to follow the vibe, the energy of this moon, it's about, you know, speaking your truth. And, you know, when you, you know, start speaking your truth, you know, because you've been stuck between knowing and saying, this is what becomes, you know, possible when you finally speak. You know, the moon's opposing the powerful stellium of the Sun, Venus and Mars in Sagittarius at a 36% orb tightness. This isn't as it's showing us, about gathering more information. It's about releasing the mental clutter that's drowning out your voice. The pelicans in the Sabian symbol are moving their habitat, moving where they live because humans disturb them. So ask yourself, what's disturbing your peace? What do you need to move out of? Some of you, it's friendship groups, maybe it's a career, a partnership, Also ask yourself, what noise are you mistaking for knowledge? This supermoon doesn't want your theories, it wants your truth spoken aloud, even if your voice shakes, even if you're fearful and scared, because a lot of the time change is scary. This is why we love our comfort zone, but a lot of the time our comfort zones, comfort people and stuff, habits can destroy us. So this is also a wolf moon, right? So now I'm just going to talk a bit more about what that means. The wolf moon gets its name from the howling of wolf packs heard during the coldest, darkest part of winter in the northern hemisphere. Indigenous native tribes tracked wolves' increased vocalization, the howling rite, during January's full moon when food was, scarce and low, and pack communication, the wolf howl, became essential for survival. European settlers called it the old moon or the moon after Yule. This full moon traditionally represents the necessity of voice during harsh conditions. Wolves howl louder when resources are scarce, not from desperation but from strategic communication. The pack that communicates survives, and the wolf that stays silent starves or gets separated. So when you combine the wolf's moon's message of essential communication with this Gemini full moon energy opposing a Sagittarius stellium, you get this. It's time to release the belief that you need more information before you can speak. The wolves don't wait until they have, perfect knowledge. They howl because the pack needs to hear them. Your voice matters more than certainty, and you being sure. And the super moon, increases that necessity by 30%. And what you've been silent about is costing you more than it would if you spoke your truth, And now I'm just going to talk a bit more about what Gemini energy represents in astrology. Okay, so Gemini energy is all about information, communication, curiosity, and being mentally flexible. It's a mutable, so changeable air sign, and this rules how we think, we speak, learn, and connect through words and ideas. And it also, represents neighbours, close family, siblings, of course, their close family, cousins and stuff like that, because obviously we learn from our immediate family or, relatives, cousins we visit once a year or whoever you visit once a year and stuff like that, right? Gemini is the messenger, the storyteller, the eternal student, collecting data points and making connections between things that seem like they're unrelated. At its best, Gemini energy brings together information in a way that we can, explain it in an accessible way. At its worst, it drowns in information without ever landing on meaning, going round and round in circles. So full moons bring endings and release. They're the peak of the lunar cycle, the moment when what was planted at the new moon 6 months ago. So we're talking about the new moon in Gemini, right? Because that's how it runs. Like, this is the full moon in Gemini, which will take us up to the next new moon in Gemini, which will take us up to the next full moon in Gemini, and they operate on the 6 month cycle. And it's all about, bringing to our attention what has reached fullness and needs to end and needs to be resolved, right? Full moons illuminate what's been hiding, bringing solutions to a head and create the emotional intensity needed to let go of what's no longer serving. So, as I said, it's about clearing out the mental clutter, the endless tabs open in your mind, the information you've been hoarding onto just in case, the thoughts you're thinking but not voicing because they're not perfectly formed yet, releasing the mental patterns that keep you collecting without integrating, learning without applying, living, the doing, and thinking without speaking. Emotions can run higher, patterns show up more clearly, the veil, the mist, the kind of what's hidden between what you're thinking and what you're feeling gets thinner. And this can be kind of dramatic because truth has no way to hide because of the super moon energy, right, which makes it stronger. And the opposition to the Sagittarius stellium, the sun, Venus and Mars being there, creates maximum tension between Gemini's know everything and Sagittarius's need to understand what matters. Your mind wants more data, your soul wants more meaning, so something has to give, right? You have to meet whether you meet the needs of your mind that may want more information, or your soul what wants to feel, wants to put meaning to things. The stellium concentrates all that fire energy, the passion, the values, the action, the motivation, our identity, who are you really, and it demands that you choose truth above everything else. So this full moon asks, what information are you hiding behind? What are you using mental busyness to avoid feeling, doing too much, avoiding throwing yourself in work, collecting information, but never actually, doing anything with it? And when will you trust that what you know is enough, right? So, as I said, positively, it's about speaking truths that you've been rehearsing silently for months or years, letting go of the belief you need more information before you can act, clearing communication blocks in relationships by finally having the conversation, releasing outdated learning that no longer serves your current understanding, trusting your voice even when your message isn't perfectly polished yet, letting go of curiosity that's become avoidance of commitment, speaking from integrated wisdom rather than collected information. And when this energy works well, this moon supports releasing mental patterns that keep you stuck in a loop, especially in the loop of analysis paralysis, right? You can learn to trust what you know without needing 17 more sources to confirm it. The supermoon intensity gives you the emotional push to finally speak what you've been thinking, write what you've been avoiding, or communicating what needs saying. In terms of the challenging expression and the shadow work, as I said, you can have too many thoughts, too many tabs, too much information with no integration, and this can lead to you feeling stressed out and mentally, psychologically and spiritually overwhelmed. So you can speak without thinking, and as I said, I'm telling you to just speak your truth, right? But the opposite problem can happen where you have verbal diarrhea without a filter, and for some of you this is what is needed, but you have to be prepared of the consequences that can come from that as well. And I'm not saying overthink, because I want you to speak your truth. The full moon wants you to, speak your truth as we go into 2026, right? But also just think about other people's boundaries as well. Try and say what you need to say respectfully. Watch out for using intellectual understanding to bypass emotional processing that needs attention. It can be like a sort of scattered energy, making us start 12 conversations or things at once and finishing none of the things we start, right? We can gossip and be superficial in our communication, and this creates connections without real intimacy. We can have nervous system dysregulation from information overload and constant mental stimulation. We can be scared of commitment. We can disguise this as keeping options open or staying curious. And we can trust our mind over our body's wisdom and, our intuitive, our inner knowing. And this energy can become difficult because we can, use learning as procrastination, research as avoidance, or needing more information as an excuse for not taking action that we already know that we need to take, right? The supermoon, as I said in the introduction, can increase anxiety and racing thoughts and mental loops. And if you can't turn your mind off, that's a signal to release, not to collect more, right? So now I'm just going to talk about the aspects that are influencing this super new moon in Gemini, right? So we have the moon making an opposition to Venus. So this tight opposition between the moon in Gemini and Venus in Sagittarius creates tension between how you think about relationships and what you actually value. Venus is part of this powerful stellium that's in Sagittarius, bringing concentrated intensity to this aspect. And the separating nature, because it's separating at 0.47, right, means that this tension has been building up. As I said earlier, the pressure's been building this week and is now at a breaking point. And this aspect asks, are you having the conversations your relationships actually need, or the safe conversations that avoid real authenticity and intimacy? Venus in Sagittarius wants an authentic connection based on shared meaning, and the moon in Gemini can talk about relationships and connection without actually connecting. Remember, it's an intellectual sign. Third house rules the mind. So if you are in a relationship, one of you needs to stop talking around the issue and speak directly to it. And this is any partnership. It doesn't just have to be an intimate relationship, right? So for instance, if you've been intellectually analysing a relationship problem instead of feeling your way through it, this full moon brings that pattern to a crisis point. Release the need to think your way through what requires vulnerability. The stellium placement increases Venus's demand for authenticity. No more clever words replacing honest feelings, you know. The moon is also making an opposition to Mars, which is also part of the stellium. And this brings tension between your thoughts and actions, giving Mars's warrior fighter energy, that fiery side alongside Sun and Venus as well. So the moon in Gemini thinks about what to do. Mars in Sagittarius wants to do it now. And the stellium's tight orb at 36% means that this isn't gentle pressure, it's an urgent demand. Say you've been talking about taking action, but not actually taking it. This Mars moon opposition gives us the power to take action, right? And it creates the frustration needed to finally move and do what needs to be done. And, over the next few days after the full moon, this tension is going to increase, So use this energy consciously by matching your words to your actions. Stop saying you'll do things that you're not actually doing. Watch for verbal aggression or harsh words that can hurt others, as I said, because it can add to us speaking before we think, right? Especially because of the supermoon making everything 30% at least bigger, right? So channel Mars's fighter warrior energy into courageous truth telling, not reactive verbal attacks. Respect other people's boundaries and assert yours. Do not stand for people being verbally abusive to you. And I know it can be hard, especially if you're in a coercive or any sort of controlling sort of relationship. You have to plan to leave those and all the rest of it. Reach out for help. Look after yourself and then your children involved first and foremost, because I know it's not, simple as speak your truth and, there won't be consequences. So, everyone knows their own situation is the point I'm getting at, but, take the steps to release yourself from the chains that are holding you back. The moon also is, in a safe way. Yeah. So the moon's also making a conjunction to Jupiter. So this increases everything, your thoughts, your words, your mental patterns, your curiosity, because Jupiter expands, makes it bigger, makes bigger whatever it touches. And with the moon, this means your emotional responses and habitual patterns get bigger, louder, more obvious, combined with the supermoon intensity. That's a massive, intensification. So the gift is that it allows us to see things more clearly because they're too big to ignore anymore. If you've been in denial about being mentally overwhelmed, Jupiter makes it undeniable. Use this by releasing on a larger scale, than you normally would anything that needs to be let go of. This isn't the moon for small adjustments. It's 3 days into the new year, right? New things, new year. Jupiter demands significant clearing, releasing. The challenge is overdoing it. Jupiter in Gemini can mean talking too much, because, you know, the full moon in Gemini, Jupiter's there as well, and, you know, oversharing as well, and releasing without judgment, and, you know, weighing up the situation. Not everything needs to be said to everyone. Sometimes you just have to choose what you need to say, choose your audience wisely. Sometimes walking away saying nothing is better for some of you, especially if it's going to put you in more danger. So, you know, just watch out for over promising, oversharing as well. And the moon makes a semi-square to Uranus. So the semi-square creates friction between your emotional needs, represented by the moon, and your need for freedom and authenticity, represented by Uranus. So, you know, it's telling us that something has to shift, something has to change suddenly. And, you know, with the super moon intensity, this isn't a gentle suggestion. It can come as a lightning bolt. It can manifest as unexpected emotional revelations, truths, you know, or sudden insights that changes everything. Or you may discover information, you know, such as a betrayal, something like that. You may discover you feel completely differently than you thought you did about a situation. So, you know, this energy means that change can happen whether you're ready or not, right? And the moon also makes a trine to the moon's north node. So this helps us with our release work, our letting go and growing, and, you know, moving in the direction of our highest path, you know, and doing the things we need to do to feel more aligned with ourselves and more aligned with our truth and authentic self-expression. So it wants us to let go of the things that serves our soul's growth path, you know. This can be things like changing our thinking, innovative thinking, or, you know, contributing more to our community, releasing Gemini scattered curiosity, and Sagittarius, you know, inflexible, dogmatic beliefs, like what I believe is right, and I believe this for 10 years, so I can't change. Sometimes we create our own prisons because we won't let go of the things. Like a seed grows into a full blown, you know, let's take, for example, a tomato seed grows into tomatoes, right? And in that way we have to grow through life. So what we thought as a child or early adult must evolve as we go deeper into our adulthood, right? And it allows us this trine with the moon's north node and the moon to step into clarity and collective service, and trust that what we're leaving behind is making space for what's meant to arrive, and that our, you know, our growth path requires us to let go, you know, and this trine supports us to evolve and to let go of what we need to, and do that release work and that inner child work and that self-forgiveness and building our self-love and management, right? And releasing the thoughts, the people, the situations that are holding us back. So, as I said, the last super full moon in Gemini was roughly 12 months ago in January 2025. So you can think about what communication patterns from then last year are you still completing now? What did you learn about your voice, your mind, your way of processing information? This full moon brings that cycle to conscious completion. This full moon corresponds to the new moon in Sagittarius from 6 months ago. So this was June, July 2025, right? So what seeds did you plant around your truths then, and your beliefs and your growth needs? What routines did you think of starting or continuing? What gave you a sense of meaning, you know? This full moon illuminates what's grown from those actions, those seeds, those ideas, right? And also shows what needs releasing and letting go of so we can grow further. And the stellium's presence shows that these seeds have grown into something demanding clear decision now. So, you know, you have to decide what stays and what needs to go. And the next full moon in Gemini should happen around January 2027, giving you a full year before this specific energy returns. So what you release now can stay released if you do the work consciously, and the wolf moon wisdom applies here, right? How now? You know, speak your truth now, or stay silent for another year, right? Now I'm just going to talk a bit more about the Sabian symbols that are influencing the super new full moon in Gemini. So yeah, I said the moon's at the 20th degree of Gemini and has the Sabian description of a large archaic volume, a big book, right? It rules the lingual muscles in our voice box, right? And the sun's at the 20th degree of Sagittarius, and this is pelicans, birds, disturbed by people, move their home, right? And this rules the left femur. And the Sabian symbols for this super full moon tell a complete story about knowledge versus wisdom, and when to stay versus when to move and let go. So the moon symbol, the large archaic volume, represents accumulated knowledge, ancient wisdom stored in text, and the weight of information preserved but not necessarily integrated. So this is the library of your mind, full of facts, stories, concepts, experiences you have collected over the years. The book is old, archaic, right, which means the wisdom it contains is established, traditional, perhaps even outdated. For this full moon, the symbol asks, what are you doing with all that knowledge? Is it serving you, or has it become a burden? An archaic volume is valuable, but if you're carrying it everywhere without ever reading it, or, reading it without ever applying it, what's the point? Sometimes old knowledge needs to be released, because it's no longer matching what you're becoming, right? The lingual muscles connection is significant, because they control your voice box and your capacity, your ability to speak, right? And knowledge wants to be spoken, said, and vocalized. What you know wants to move forward from your mind through your voice into the world. The full moon in Gemini opposing the Sagittarius stellium says you've studied enough, now speak, right? So, for you guys that have maybe been researched, writing that book, thinking about starting the content channel, doing something with design or whatever it is you've been thinking about doing, right, just collecting information, never really doing anything with it. It's now saying, you've got enough experience, start. And I can speak from this experience. I used to procrastinate, and I decided to do, and I'm not fully prepared, but I found that as I go on, I learn things, I change things, I adjust things. The key is starting, right? And the sun symbol, the pelicans moving their habitat, right, their home, after being disturbed by people, represents a necessary relocation when your environment, no longer serves your well-being. So this can be your day-to-day habits, the people, your friends you hang around with, your relationship, spending time with your family, whatever it is, or not spending enough time with people. It's not always, letting go of people. Sometimes it's like bringing people closer as well. And the pelicans are not dramatic about it. They simply move, right? Humans invade their space, so they find a new space. Smart survival, not victimhood. For this full moon, the symbol asks, what environment, physical, mental, emotional, or philosophical, needs to change because it's disturbing your peace? The pelicans know when to leave. Do you? The pelicans, the birds, don't conduct extensive research on whether leaving is justified. They don't consult 17 sources about optimal migration timing. They are disturbed, so they move. The left femur connection is about standing firm in your truth and having the structural integrity to walk away when necessary. The femur is your strongest bone in your body. It supports you standing and walking. Standing firm doesn't mean staying in disturbing circumstances. It means having the strength to walk towards better conditions, right? So to integrate both these Sabian symbols, right? The moon in Gemini represents the part of you that thinks knowing more will solve the problem. The sun in Sagittarius, with its relocating pelicans, represents the part of you that knows sometimes you just need to move, regardless of how much information you have collected. And the integration work is learning when to study and when to act, when to analyze and when to simply leave what's not working. moon. Your mind wants more data about whether you should leave the situation that's causing chaos, right, or just doesn't feel right. Your soul already knows you should. The pelicans don't commission, feasibility studies and do all that research, They move when disturbed. The stellium in Sagittarius back in the sun's position means you have the fire, the courage, the conviction to move. We're being astrologically supported to do so. And Venus says your values support leaving. Mars says you have the energy to actually do it. And the sun says your identity requires it, right? Meanwhile, the Gemini moon clutches its archaic volume, its book, saying, but what if I need to reference this information later, right? And it's all about finding the balance, right? No, don't throw everything out completely. That's not what I'm saying in terms of learning from the experience, right? But what I'm saying is sometimes we just gather information. We don't start and this holds us back. This is how years and decades get wasted, right? So in terms of the lunar release work, it's asking us to release the belief that more information equals better decisions. Sometimes you know enough. Sometimes you have known for a while. As I said earlier, a lot of the time we know the right things to do, right? But it's scary to get outside of our comfort zone and habits. We've been doing it for so long, so it can be hard to let go, but it stops our growth. It stops us from learning new things and, feeling the fullness of life, and, the archaic volume has given you its wisdom. Now you need to act on it like the pelicans do. Close the book, use your, voice spots, your language muscles, speak what you know, move where your truth leads, right? Release the attachments to environments, beliefs, or communication patterns that disturb your peace just because you've invested time in them, right? The pelicans don't stay because they're nested there for years. They move because staying no longer serves them. They're being disturbed by the humans, right? Your job isn't to justify the move with perfect logic. Your job is to move. The supermoon intensity means you can't ignore what needs releasing anymore. It's too loud, too clear, too undeniable. The mental noise has reached a crisis point. The disturbing environment has become intolerable. Trust what you know, speak what needs saying, leave what disturbs you. The pelicans teach economy of action, no drama, just decisive movement towards better conditions. Take the quiet volume's wisdom with you. If it serves you, leave it behind if it weighs you down, but move. The wolves are howling, the pelicans are relocating. Your voice knows what to say. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk a bit about the karmic meaning. So, as I said, at the soul level, the super full moon is asking you to examine your relationship with knowledge itself, not as power, but as a responsibility that includes speaking what you know. So, as I said earlier in the introduction, this full moon falls in the Andra Naksatra in Vedic astrology, which is ruled by Rahu, the North Node, which intensifies themes of storms, transformation, and penetrating insight. Andra spans from the 6th to the 20th degree of Gemini, and at the 19th degree of Gemini, this full moon lands in Andra's 4th pada, ruled by Pisces and Jupiter. So this pada brings spiritual dissolution and mystical storms to Andra's already intense energy. You're not just experiencing mental chaos, you're experiencing a spiritual crisis that dissolves old certainties. The deity, the god of Andra is Rudra, the storm god, and the fierce form of Shiva. Rudra represents the howling wind, the tears that purify, the destruction that serves transformation. But here is what matters. Rudra's storms clear stagnation. They break open what's sealed too tight. They bring tears that cleanse, not tears that drown. This full moon in Andra's 4th pada means the storm is particularly mystical. It's dissolving your mental certainties to reveal spiritual truth beneath the thoughts. Past life patterns around information as protection are, surfacing, coming up. You've been here before, using knowledge as a shield, collecting facts as armor, staying in your head to avoid your heart. Perhaps past lifetimes where speaking what you knew was dangerous, so you learned to know silently, to see without saying, to understanding without revealing. And the Pisces Jupiter influence of the fourth pada suggests you've also experienced spiritual bypassing, using mystical concepts to avoid difficult earthly truths. The karma you're working with isn't about learning more, it's about integrating what you already know and finding the courage to speak it. The supermoon's intensity makes this unavoidable. Rudra's tears are falling whether you're ready or not. The storm is here to break open what you've kept sealed, right? And the stellium in Sagittarius opposing the Andra moon creates tension between mystical dissolution, which is represented by Andra in Pisces pada, right? And fiery truth telling, which is the Sagittarius energy. Your soul knows what needs to be said, right? Your mind is creating storms to avoid staying in it. The tears want to fall so you can finally speak clearly. So to work with this karma, Andra's power is to make gains through struggle and effort, specifically the power to achieve your goals after, weathering storms, after the drama, after the chaos, after the heartbreak, being let down, rejected, abandoned, and all of that, right? Your soul at the time of this super full moon in Gemini wants to release the pattern of, the continuous, perpetual mental storms that never land anywhere, right? The chaos, the same repeated toxic relationship thoughts and all of that, right? The struggle isn't meant to be permanent. It's meant to deliver you somewhere new. So ask yourself, what am I gaining from staying in mental chaos or any other chaos you're in, right? What does information overwhelm, having a lot of information, just collecting, never acting on it, protect you from feeling or doing? The answer reveals your karmic pattern, right? Maybe knowing everything keeps you from committing to anything, right? Maybe analysing everything keeps you from feeling anything. Maybe collecting information indefinitely protects you from the vulnerability of speaking what you actually believe. The evolutionary growth purpose is learning that spiritual depth and intellectual clarity can coexist without one drowning out the other. The Pisces Jupiter pada wants a mystical connection. The Gemini placement wants mental clarity. The Sagittarius stellium wants, courageous, bold truth telling. You don't have to choose. You integrate all three, right? Speak your mystical insights with intellectual clarity and fiery conviction, standing firm in your beliefs and truth and your values. Not the values you've been told to value, right, but what you actually want to value, who you actually are. And if you are experiencing heightened, increased anxiety, racing thoughts or emotional overwhelm during this full moon, that's Andra's storm doing what storms do, clearing the air. Rudra's tears aren't punishment, they're purification. Let yourself cry if tears come. Let yourself speak if words come. Let yourself move if leaving comes, The storm knows what it is doing, even if you don't. The karmic lesson is this: knowledge that stays silent serves no one, including you. Your soul didn't come here to be a walking library. It came to speak, to teach, to say, to communicate wisdom earned through your actual lived experience. The archaic volume wants to be open, and read aloud, not kept sealed on the shelf. And we've all got books, that we've bought and never read, and as I said, it's not about, gathering more information. It's about speaking what you already know, right? So in terms of when to do rituals during this new moon, the super full moon is exact at 10:03, as I said, on the 3rd of January 2026. So the most potent window for release work is 8 hours before and after the exact moon. So from 2:03 a.m. on the 3rd of January to 6:03, right? And if you do release rituals, journaling or having important conversations, aim for this time, right? Between 2 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. at night. The emotional clarity will be its sharpest during these hours, but if that timing doesn't work for your schedule, the entire day carry strong release energy, and you have up to 48 hours after there's that full moon for effective cleaning work. So as I said, this full moon is at the 19th degree of Gemini, so this activates the critical energy for anyone with natal planets or angles at the 18th to 20th degree of any of the mutable signs. So we're talking Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius and Pisces, or involving Mercury, Jupiter and Neptune, right? And the stellium between the 19 to 21 degrees of Sagittarius, well, it's at the 19th, but it activates the 19th to 21 degrees of Sagittarius, creates a powerful opposition axis, right? So if you have placements in these degrees, this full moon will affect you intensely, so use it consciously, right? And especially if you have lots of planets in Gemini or Sagittarius, or lots of aspects in your chart involving, Jupiter, Neptune and the moon, or Cancer. Anyway, so in terms of practical steps that you can take in terms of rituals, right, you can do a mental decluttering ritual for 45 to 60 minutes. So get every notebook, journal and digital app you use, spend time going through what you've collected, all those articles you saved to read later, all those notes on concepts you wanted to study, all those quotes you copied down. Be honest. What are you actually going to use? Release what you're not, delete the files, recycle the papers, unsubscribe from newsletters and channels and content that you never read or never listened to and all of that, right? Close the browser tabs you've had open for 3 months now. I'm guilty of this one. Oh my gosh, I've got so many. Anyway, so close the browser tabs that you've had open for 3 months or years in, some people's case that you've had there just in case. The archaic volume is heavy. Put down what you're not actually reading. As you clear each item, say, I release information that doesn't serve my current path. I trust what I already know. Physical clearing creates mental space for what actually matters, right? Number 2, speak what you've been thinking. Choose a moment. That thing you've been thinking about for weeks, months, maybe years, but haven't said aloud. Write it down first, all of it uncensored. Then decide who needs to hear it. Not everyone, the right person or people, choose your audience, as I said. And with Mars in Sagittarius giving you the courage in the stellium, right? It's best to have these conversations within 48 hours of the full moon. Don't rehearse them 17 or more times. Don't do that. Don't gather more information about the right way to say it. The pelicans don't research optimal migration announcements, As I said, they just move, so just speak. Start with, there's something I need to say and I'm not sure about how to say it perfectly, but here it is. Then trust your voice, your lingual muscles, know what to do. Identify what's disturbing your peace, right? Make a list. What environment, situations, relationships, beliefs or patterns are actively disturbing your peace right now? Not irritating, but disturbing it, right? The pelicans didn't leave because of a minor annoyance. They left because humans invaded their living space, their habitat. What's invading yours? Be specific. My job isn't specific enough. What about your job? The morning meeting where my manager dismisses, my ideas publicly, that's specific. Get specific about what in your job, relationship, your life that's bothering you. Once you've identified what's specifically disturbing you, you can make a plan to move away from it. The pelicans relocated. What needs relocating in your life, right? Number 4, release one commitment you made from mental overwhelm, right? So, look at your calendar. What did you say yes to because you thought you should, or because you had too many tabs open in your mind to think clearly? What commitment is draining you that you agreed to during a previous mental overwhelm period? Release one. Send a message, make the call. I need to step back from this commitment because it's not aligned with where I am right now. You don't need 17 paragraphs explaining why. The pelicans don't write dissertations about, their, habitat relocation. They just relocate, right? Jupiter conjunct this moon will want you to over explain, resist, be short, be honest, be kind, you know, then release. So what to avoid during this new moon, you know, do not use this full moon energy to make major decisions whilst you're in the peak emotional overwhelm. Wait 48 hours for clarity. Don't overshare in public what should be said privately with specific people. Use release work as an excuse to burn bridges without considering consequences. Stay silent because you can't find perfect words, you know, there are no perfect words. Research optimal release strategies instead of actually releasing. You know, if you do that, you find yourself collecting more information, just be like, oh, I'm doing it again, I just need to do, right? And if you find yourself opening more browser tabs about how to let go instead of actually letting go, that's Gemini shadow, right? Close the tabs, feel what needs feeling, speak what needs speaking, move what needs moving, right? So I'm just going to talk a bit now about, you know, taking care of different parts of your body in a bit more detail. So as I said, you know, your body always shows you what needs your attention, and, you know, it's important to pay attention to how your physical body is processing themes of communication, mental stress and movement. So, you know, the 19th degree of Gemini rules your throat muscles in your voice box, your capacity to speak and your vocal expression. The Lanets contains the vocal cords and allows you to produce sound, right, to communicate verbally and express what's in your mind and heart through words. So during this full moon, your throat might feel tight or emotionally blocked. If you're experiencing sore throat, hoarseness, difficulty, you know, swallowing, tension in your neck, or feeling like there's a lump in your throat, your body may be asking you, what am I not saying? What truth is stuck in my throat? What words am I swallowing instead of speaking? And of course, you know, in the middle of winter, and if you live in the UK or, you know, Europe or other cold places, you know, we may just have cold. So it may not just be because your body's asking you what's stuck in your throat in terms of truth. You know, you may have like phlegm stuck there, but anyway, so, you know, you can do some vocal release exercises anyway. Hum, chant or sing daily. Let sound move through your throat without words. This release helps you, you know, let go of the tension. You can do throat stretches, you know, gentle neck rolls, looking up at the ceiling and holding for 30 seconds, side to side neck stretches, you know, releasing the physical holding pattern that mirrors emotional withholding by doing these sort of exercises. You can drink warm liquids like herbal teas, especially chamomile, licorice, root or throat coat, warm water with honey and lemon, you know, drink broth, soothe the physical irritation when you prepare to speak by drinking any of these. Journal before speaking. If you can't speak it yet, write it first. This helps move the stuck energy from throat to hand to page, creating flow. Often after writing, speaking becomes easier, you know. And if you notice persistent hoarseness lasting more than 2 weeks, difficulty breathing or severe throat pain, see a doctor, because, you know, we are in flu season as well, because these can be indicating issues needing medical attention beyond emotional release work, right? In terms of left femur exercises, you know, as I said, the femur is the longest and strongest bone in your body, supporting your ability to stand and walk, and the left femur specifically represents moving forward, walking away from what no longer serves you, and having the structural integrity to relocate when necessary. So during this full moon, you may feel instability in your legs, hip and some other discomfort in your joints, right, or just weakness when standing. So you can do grounding exercises like stand barefoot on earth if possible, or it's cold, you know, so indoors. Feel your femur supporting you. Practice balancing on one leg, then the other. Build confidence in your physical ability to stand and move. Hip strengthening, you know, do squats, lunges and hip bridges. Build the muscle supporting your femur. Strong hip support, decisive movement towards better circumstances. Walk with intention. Take a 15 to 30 minute walk daily. With each step affirm, I move towards my Whatever serves my peace. I walk away from what disturbs me. Make movement meditation. Do leg massages, gently massage from hip to knee. This can release stored up tension about should I stay or should I go decisions. Your body holds indecision as muscle tension, but again, if any pain stays longer, seek medical attention. Gemini rules the shoulders, arms, hands, lugs and nervous system. So, these areas may feel more sensitive or require extra care, so you can do some breath work meditation, some arm and shoulder release, and you can sort of limit stimulation, because Gemini energy can make us more nervous and hyper, so reduce caffeine, screen time before bed, and information consumption, and no scrolling social media or Reddit or Google or binge watching shows before bed. Your nervous system can be overloaded, so give it a rest. Gemini rules handwrite, so writing by hand, not typing, creates different neural pathways and can, really help you become more calmer, and calm the mental loops more effectively than digital communication. And in terms of energetic flow, the moon's energy during this phase flows from our mental centers, Gemini, into our physical expression systems, our throat, hands and nervous system. And when information is stuck in our mind without outlet, our body creates symptoms to force release. So, as I said, the tension in your throat is information trying to become speech. That restlessness in your leg can be your femurs preparing you to walk away from, chaotic and disturbing circumstances and relationships and all of that. And you can notice during this full moon period a racing heart, that's anxiety speaking, tension, headaches, that's information overload, digestive issues, that's swallowing words, that literally affects you being able to swallow your food right, or insomnia, your mind won't turn off. And these aren't separate problems, they're one problem. You're stuck in information that needs to be released, the truth that needs to be spoken right. Give yourself permission to speak your truth, but also speak less, not more. If words feel empty, remember it's quality over quantity, and a chaos volume doesn't need to be read cover to cover, just the chapters that matter now. Your body will relax when your mind stops forcing impossible standards. So ultimately, as I said at the beginning, for some of you, it'll be speaking more. For some of you, it will be speaking less, Only you can decide which one is what you need to do. But one thing that is clear is that, less is more, and you need to not collect more information. You need to act on the information that you already have, right? So now I'm just going to give you some guidance for each of the sun, moon and rising signs, just to help you focus a bit more. So Aries, this full moon lights up your third house of communication and mental patterns. Release scattered thinking and say what needs saying. Your challenge is speaking without attacking. Use Mars's courage in Sagittarius for honest communication, not verbal warfare, right? Taurus, the full moons in your second house brings release around values and self-worth. Let go of the beliefs you need to know everything before you're valuable. Your challenge is trusting your voice adds value even when it's not perfectly informed. You know enough, right? So Gemini, this is your full moon in your first house of self and identity. Release the mental overwhelm that's drowning your authentic voice. Your challenge is being yourself without performing cleverness, speaking from substance, not just surface, right? Not just gossiping. And Jupiter conjunct your moon increases everything. Use it wisely, right? And Cancer, the full moon in the 12th house of the subconscious and release wants you to let go of old mental patterns that you've been carrying around unconsciously. Your challenge is releasing information that feels like emotional security. Not knowing everything won't kill you. Staying silent about what you know might. Leo, this activates your 11th house of community and future vision. Release the need to be the smartest person in every group. group conversation. Your challenge is contributing and what serves the collective, right? Not what makes you look good. The stellium reminds you substance over performance. Virgo, the full moon in your 10th house of career and public roles, wants you to release perfectionism that keeps you from serving your work until when it's perfect, in commas, right? Perfectionistic Virgo energy and all of that. Your challenge is trusting imperfect communication is better than perfect silence. Speak your professional truth even when it's not polished. Libra, this lights up your 9th house of beliefs and higher learning. Release the belief that more education means more worth. Your challenge is speaking from lived wisdom rather than collected credentials. You have learned enough, now teach what you know. Scorpio, the full moon in your 8th house brings release through depth and transformation. Let go of surface conversations that avoid real intimacy. Your challenge is using your depth without drowning others. The stellium gives you fire to speak transformational truths. Use it. Sagittarius, this activates your 7th house of partnerships. With the stellium in your sign opposite the moon, release patterns of preaching rather than having conversations and dialoguing. Your challenge is listening as much as speaking. Truth needs two-way communication after all, not just a monologue. You just talking at people. Capricorn, with the full moon in your 6th house of, daily work and service. Release mental chaos that disrupts your routine and productivity. Your challenge is trusting simple systems over complex ones. Not everything needs 17 steps, right? Sometimes it just needs doing. Aquarius, this lights up your 5th house of creativity and self-expression. Release the belief that creative work needs more research before you begin. Your challenge is creating from what you know now, not what you might learn later. Make art, stop researching, art making, just do it. Pisces, the full moon in your 4th house of home and emotional foundation wants you to release mental noise that disconnects you from intuitive knowing. Your challenge is trusting feeling over overthinking. The stellium, squares and quincunxes ask you to integrate both, but feel first, think second, right? So now I'm just going to give you some more questions to really help you guys with your self-reflection this full moon, right? So you can ask yourself, what information am I collecting to avoid action I know I need to take? Be brutally honest. We use research as procrastination more often than we admit. What are you supposedly still learning about that you actually already understand well enough to move on? Where is needing more information protecting you from vulnerability? You can ask yourself, where am I using mental complexity to avoid emotional simplicity? Sometimes the truth is simple, right? And we make it complicated because simple truths are harder to avoid. I am unhappy here. It's simple. On the other hand, you're saying things like, while considering various factors and perspectives and analysing multiple viewpoints, I am unhappy, that's long-winded, it's complicated. Which one are you doing? Where are you using your clever mind to avoid simple emotional reality, right? You can also ask, what environment is disturbing my peace that I'm justifying staying in, right? So as I said before, the pelicans moved, the birds moved because we were disturbing their peace in the Sabian symbology, right? Us humans, they didn't conduct feasibility studies on whether they were justified in feeling disturbed, right? As I said, so what are you justifying that your body is telling you to leave? What are you defending with logic, but your gut is saying is wrong, right? And you can ask yourself, if my voice had been honoured growing up, what would I be saying now that I'm not saying? Many of us learn to edit ourselves before speaking, to check 17 times whether our thoughts were right before voicing them. If you were taught that your voice mattered as it was without the edits, right, what would you be saying now? That's what needs releasing. That's what you need to say, right? Also ask yourself, what am I pretending not to know? Gemini shadow is fake curiosity, acting like you don't know when you do know. Where are you performing ignorance to avoid responsibility? What are you pretending to be confused about that you actually understand perfectly? This supermoon is making it harder to maintain that performance. And finally, ask, what would I do if I trusted my voice as much as I trust my mind? Your mind says analyze more. Your voice says speak now. Which do you trust? What action would you take if you value your voice's wisdom as highly as your mind's information? That's your next step, right? So ultimately, bringing this all together now, this January's Super 4 Dwarf Moon in Gemini, right, asks you to release the mental patterns that keep you collecting information without integrating, learning without speaking, and thinking without doing. And with 30% more intensity than a regular full moon, you can't ignore what needs clearing anymore. The stellium in Sagittarius with the Sun, Venus and Mars there at a 36% orb tightness creates concentrated fire, demanding you choose truth over trivia. Choosing meaning over mental gymnastics. The Dwarf Moon wisdom reminds you the path that communicates survives. Your voice matters more than certainty. The Andra Natsakra influence means Rudra's storm is clearing stagnation through tears, or staying in our comfort zone and just not moving on. And this super full moon in Gemini is bringing it through tears, intensity and breakthrough. The Sabian Symbols teach that, a chaos, big books, volumes need reading aloud, not just storing, and pelicans move when disturbed, not after conducting research on optimal relocation timing. And in that same, vein, this is what we need to do, looking out for what comes up during this period as it's showing us what needs releasing with absolute clarity. And the new moon in 2 weeks will offer new beginnings, but only if the space is available via you clearing now what needs to be letting go of. And as I said, I know not everyone can blow their house down and let go. You need to make strategic plans. Do not put yourself in danger. We have the Samaritans here in the UK who you can reach out if you need to talk about anything. We have domestic violence helplines and stuff with quick Google. Do it in a safe place if your situation involves that, and remember, help is out there, and I'm sending you all my love if you are in a tricky situation like that. So yeah, as I said, the next new moon in 2 weeks offers new beginnings, but only if the space is available. Between now and then, you're in the release and integration phase. What you let go of matters as much as what you keep. Trust the process. The storms are not punishment. They're, purification, helping you to move forward. This work is real, it's hard, it's not easy, but the freedom, the liberation available to us if we're willing to move forward is big, right? The super full moon in Gemini gives us permission to stop collecting and start speaking, to release information that doesn't serve wisdom, to trust your voice even when the message isn't perfectly formed, it's not polished, Remember that you're not betraying your intelligence by simplifying, you're honouring it by making it useful, right? Like the pelicans, relocating without the drama. When their inner peace is disturbed, you can move away from what no longer serves you without needing perfect justification, right? So like the wolves howling in the winter darkness, you can speak what your pack needs to hear without waiting for perfect knowledge. Like Rudra's cleansing storms, you can cry the tears that purify you, cleanse you without saying right. You've got this. Trust your voice, trust what you know, and remember the archaic volume, the big book in your mind, doesn't need to be read cover to cover before you speak. The pelicans didn't research optimal living conditions before moving. They moved because staying disturbed them, it hurt them, and that's wisdom. That's enough, right? So yeah, that's the end of this very in-depth analysis on the super full moon in Gemini on the 3rd of January 2026 at 10:03 a.m. GMT time. I'm Amani, your holistic astrological life coach, and thank you guys for listening to me. Take care and see you next time.